Stream died, didn't it? Yeah, internet connection. Our internet connection isn't great here, to be honest with you. Yeah, we're back. Sorry about that. But yeah, it's the fact that Australia is hitting an outbreak again. It just makes me realize that it doesn't really matter where you are right now. I like adventures. I'm incredibly privileged, and then I can still work from home. We found a nice house in Germany, and I've got this lovely craft room to work in. And I've got the technology that allows me to chat to lovely folks like you. Yeah, it was the Black Eyed Peas that broke the stream. It's been doing it. Like, it's been breaking once per stream. It's probably because my husband just fired up some video game or something like that. Been trying to get a better contract, a better speed. Unfortunately, we're rather limited here in this building with what we can get. Last few stitches. Look, 4 to go. And the last 2 are pearls. Pearl. And pearl. And so what you do with the very last one, so you end up with 1 loop on the needle. I'll leave that there for a second. I'm going to leave a nice long tail, break it off, and then all you do is you actually reach through the loop and grab the tail and pull it into a bit of a slip knot. And there we go. We have casted off the waist of this sweater. So there is our ribbing at the waistline. Nice and nicely stretchy, not too tight, not too tight. So I get to pick up the sleeves. I need to look at the pattern and see what it actually says to do. Sleeves. All right, so I'm supposed to be using size A circular needle or DPNs. So I used a 3 millimeter. So I need my 3 millimeter needle for the sleeves. Where's my 3? I just had it. .75, 3.25, 3. All right. Thanks. Yes. So I'm going to use this lovely. Oh, do I only have the 60? Crap. Well, no, I've got a 60 and I've also got this other crappy one. I hate it when I have to use different sizes of needles. What size is that? My gauge. Yeah, that's a 3. So I'll be using this lovely Knit Pro and this crappy old one with the plasticky cable that likes to curl up. Ugh, I hate it, but necessity. Okay. All right, so we're going to start by returning the stitches on the waist yarn onto the circular needle. So start with a sleeve here, and there's my waist yarn. So go ahead and break that. You kept snapping the wood ones. Oh, wow. I've not snapped any wooden ones, but I mean, yeah. Yeah, I guess you must be super tight or knitting very tight things. I've snapped a couple, like I've chipped a tip on 1 or 2 of them. Okay, let's just get this started. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and start sliding these stitches back onto the needle, and this is going to take me a little bit of time to do. They want to sort of, there we go. It's hard to get the tip in on these. Could probably use, you know what I might do? I'm actually going to use the smaller, pointier needle because it's going to be easier to pick them up, and then I'll just transfer them onto the bigger one. because the wooden needle doesn't have quite as pointy of a tip. So I'll use this one. So I'm going to pick all these live stitches back up off the needle. And then I did cast off a bit at the underarm, you can see here. So there is that's the armhole. And there are some stitches cast off of the underarm. So I will need to pick up and knit into the 12 stitches here. So I will pick up some additional stitches around there. So my armhole's going to be, my sleeve's going to be 108 all the way around. And then for the plain sleeves, for the short plain sleeves, wow, you literally just, there's no shaping. You literally just knit a bunch of rounds. And then do a cuff. Okay, so she has you pick up and knit. You use a smaller needle just to pick up, and then you actually knit them on the second size needle. Whatever, okay. I might have accidentally sat on them a few times as well. Yeah, that'll do it. I think we used to get pony circulars at my knitting shop in Sydney, which were the sort of bamboo circulars. Those were kind of before the Knit Pros were widely available. I think these are all green stitches I'm picking up, aren't I? Yes, that makes things a little easier. Just gonna kind of dig it out, and I'm trying to make sure I'm not splitting the yarn as I go. So if you are just joining us, I have successfully casted off the body of Lanatus by Susan Crawford, and I'm now picking up live stitches on the sleeve so that I can knit my short sleeves. So you know, go ahead and pull that waste yarn through now. There, so you can see we've got a bunch of stitches on the needle. Just going to keep going all the way around. Sun shining today. Should probably go outside at some point. So I could knit each of these sleeves one at a time. I could. The reason I want to do two at a time is because A, it means I don't have to count rows. I know that they're going to be exactly the same length. Because I often say, you know, I'm likely to get bored knitting the second one and make it shorter. And also, it's just very frustrating when you're this close to finishing something and then have to go back and do the same thing a second time, like second sock syndrome. Like, it's just boring. I'd much rather do it once and get it done with. So, okay, I'm sliding through a bit easier now on these stitches. If I can do it just once, I would prefer to. What I'll do is I'll pick up and get each side ready on the needle, and then I will combine them all onto the 2 3mm needles and show you how that works. And then I'll call it a day, or call it a stream. Yeah, 2 at a time, only way, yeah. I am very impressed by people who can knit one sock and then turn around and churn the exact same sock out again. There is a way, I did see at one point, Woben, online, a way of knitting 2 socks at once using just one set of needles. Like, you knit one sock inside the other sock, basically doing it like with a double knitting technique, where actually knitting 2 things at the same time. So I did see years ago someone talk about doing that. It just seemed to me like a high risk factor, because if you make one mistake in the way you're twisting those yarns, your socks aren't going to separate. One of your friends would do it. Yeah, your socks are not going to separate at the end. You'll have knitted interlocked socks, and then so I never bothered to actually try that technique, because it just seemed like fraught with danger of knitting inseparable socks. But it's also kind of a cool magic trick, I guess. I bet it was confusing to watch. All right, nearly back around to the other side. I've had to pull out a loop because the sleeves don't have enough stitches to go around the circular needle, of course. My watch is buzzing. This was a person who knitted a huge cable jacket with hand-dyed yarn and organized it in such a way that the fade was perfect. Wow. Yeah, well, I like executing, like I said, I like executing complicated patterns. I've done a fair amount of that, but the sock technique just seemed like one where one mistake could be fatal. Versus most other stuff, you can fix mistakes if you catch them. All right, last stitch is on the needle. Okay. So now I can pull out the waste yarn fully. Whoop. All right. So all those stitches are on the needle. I'm just going to count to make sure I've got them all and I haven't dropped any. Get out of here, wasteful. Working wool, get over there. I'm just going to give me a moment to count all these stitches. 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, which is exactly how many we're supposed to have. Woo! Okay. Return those stitches onto the circular needle, rejoin yarn, and knit to end of round. Then we pick up and knit. Okay, so I'm going to now slip these. Let me see this jacket. What are you talking about? Oh my God. Wow. Wow, that fades to the bottom. That's not like just the lighting. Wow, that's really cool. Edinburgh fade set. Look, it's technically brilliant. The fade yarns, like the speckle yarns, are very much in style right now. I'm not a huge fan, to be honest with you. I get why people like them, but I like a good, deep, solid color, like this teal here. But yeah, the speckle yarns, that's very on trend, what she's done there. The fade and the speckles, super trendy for 2020 in knitting. But I almost feel like, and I've done what she's done, is knitting a complicated pattern out of a flecked yarn. Sometimes it actually hides the pattern a little bit, I often feel like with a very complex pattern, if you want to see it, a plain yarn is actually the way to go. But I get it. I mean, I've knitted a cable jacket out of Noro and you can't bloody see the cables. I did that St. Bridget I showed off a few weeks back, which is a beautiful, traditional cable, Aran cable done in a flecky red heather, and you can't see it. The wool she's chosen, it's not too speckly. You can actually see the lace, which is good. Okay, there's half the stitches on that needle. Oof. This is a multi-stage process here. May do this by tomorrow. If the short sleeves are just knit plain and then cast them off, I could have this done tomorrow. I kind of thought there would be some shaping. I guess I could have knitted them onto it rather than transferring, but whatever. Okay, they're now all on the wooden needle. All right, so I should show, we talked about the lengths of circulars, and for the benefit of people who are watching who maybe aren't a knitter or who haven't done circular knitting, circular needles on a cable are great for being able to knit round and around a circumference. But as you can see here for this sleeve, if I actually push these stitches around, like I'm going to start knitting, so get them to the end of the needle. I don't actually have enough stitches to stretch all the way around the needle. It doesn't fit. And so that's where you use a shorter circular. If you can use one of those shorter circulars like we showed, or there are different techniques you can use. So one technique is the magic loop, and that's where you have a circular like this one. This is a 60 centimeter or 24 inches, is a bit longer, where you actually just take the knitting about halfway along here, and I'm just going to pinch it, and I'm just going to pull out the excess cable. So I've just created an extra bit of cable sticking out there, which we call the magic loop. But that's just sticking out the side. So that's one technique you can do for knitting a small circumference if you don't have a short enough needle. And actually, I never bother with short needles anymore. I use magic loop, or I do this other technique with 2 circulars, which I will show you. But first, we need to actually knit around these stitches. So we take my working yarn, and I've inserted into the first stitch. I'm just going to make a loop, leaving a bit of a tail. Actually, I might leave a slightly longer tail than normal. And put on the needle and start knitting. And obviously, I don't want to pull that first stitch too tight, or I'll pull the wool clean through. There we go. That's all magic loop is, Mumble, is literally pulling out the excess. Pulling out the excess. That's all the magic loop is. And so it's easier if you use like a longer, like you'd use an 80 centimeter, which is like a 32-inch needle. That is all magic loop is pulling out the excess cable to shorten it. Literally all it is. And so, of course, when you get to that point, which I'll knit across to that point and show you what happens. So I'm knitting across to that point. Yeah, it sounds a lot fancier and more complicated than it actually is. The forbidden technique. No, it is literally just pulling the excess cable out between 2 stitches. And so now when I show you 2 circulars, your mind's going to be blown as well, because it's just a slight refinement on this. Okay. So I'm getting up to where I pulled the loop out now. So you really need at least a 60 centimeter or 24-inch needle to do it. So look, I've gotten to the end. I stop, I rearrange the stitches on my needle. Imagine that this was all the way around instead of having that underarm bit. All I would now do is, again, pull out a loop again. So you pull out the loop again. You just keep pulling out a loop wherever you need to. I try and alter, like I don't want to always pull through the loop. Like imagine this was joined up. I don't want to always pull in the same spot because it might stretch out a bit between those 2 stitches. So I try and vary where I actually pull the loop out, but that's literally all it is pulling out the excess. And then you scooch your stitches along the needle so that you can knit. So let's finish going around. So I'm supposed to knit. Basically, I knit around the stitches, those live stitches that I picked up. Knit around them. What I'll do is I'll do like 1 or 2 rows in the sleeves to show you, and then I will break for lunch and pick up the second one. And you guys can all rejoin me tomorrow and hopefully see me finish this sucker off. But I'll just get the sleeve going so you can see what I mean about the 2 circulars technique. Yeah, going to get some 24-inch needles. Yeah, I mean, or even longer, like the 80 centimeters, which would be, what is that, like a 30 or 32-inch? Not sure what they come in American sizes. I like the 60s, but if you're going to do a sweater, like the body of the sweater, a 60 is quite a lot to have like 400 stitches bunched up on. So 80s are, well, and look, the reason I didn't buy 80s in the past was because they were these crappy ones where the cable is really stiff. If you're buying, Knit Pros or something where the cable isn't curling up and getting in your way, you can get away with, buy all the longer ones. Buy all the 30, 31 inch, whatever that is. Buy all that length, because If you buy them that length, you can knit anything with them. You can knit the fingers of gloves by just pulling out the excess between two of the stitches. Yes, it'll be a bit tedious with a needle that long, but you can totally do it. Versus, when I started trying to buy a full complement of 40s, 60s, and 80s, and even shorter, it's a bit silly. Okay, so I've knitted around the stitches on the needles. Now it's telling me to pick up and knit 12 stitches at the underarm. So let me just quickly, I want to count how many stitches I had at the underarm. So if I look along the cast off edge, so if I count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's about 12, but because of the way it's spread out. All right, I'm just picking up and knitting 12 at the underarm. So I'm going to try and space them out evenly here. Yeah, interchangeables are the way to go. I mean, because then you can have multiple cables and do multiple projects at once. And so to pick up and knit, I'm just going to go through the cast off edge there, and I'm just trying to find it. Oh, it would help if I could see. I swear, you guys, my eyes as I get older. And I go through both sides of the cast off. There is it. I need like a magnifying glass. Look, it's the underarm. It's not going to make a great deal of difference. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So by pick up and knit, you see patterns mentioned. What I'm literally doing is I'm going through the edge, putting my needle into it like it's a stitch, and then I'm just knitting a stitch through it. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 'Trying to find the right spot there. 11, and one more in the corner. 12. All right, so I picked up and knitted 12. You will end up with a little bit of a hole at the corner there, which is why I've got that tail to sort of weave through later. I think always when you pick up and knit at an underarm, you'll end up with a little bit of a gap there. It's almost like doing the gusset on a heel as well. Sometimes a pattern will tell you to pick up extra stitches, and then when you do the first round around, you decrease there just to try and close up any hole. But I'm just going to do it by weaving in the ends afterwards to close up any holes there. All right, so place, okay, I've done that. I'm supposed to place a marker halfway along the underarm. Where did I lose my stitch marker when I took it off? I'll just grab a new one. This is where having these stitch markers that you can open up is very handy because you can slip them on after the fact. So these are these funny little, almost like safety pin style ones, like that. And so I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Put it on the halfway point there. And that will be the new start and end of my round. So I'm going to go ahead and knit to the end of the round now. And right, that's right. She had me do this on, all right, I'm doing it on the 3mm needle. That's correct. That's what I wanted. So again, magic loop. So now I've fully joined it up. For magic loop, all I'm going to do, actually I'm not going to do magic loop. I'm going to do the second circular. So I'm going to take this other 3mm circular. Yeah, knitting's pretty big in Germany. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to join any knitting circles or anything yet because everything's closed, but yeah, there's plenty of knitting shops in Munich, and I think so. All right, so what I've done is I've done the magic loop. I've pulled that cable out, and I'm going to pull the wool along, but I'm not going to knit with the same end of that circular needle. I'm going to knit the first half of these stitches onto another circular needle. So I'm going to start here, and remember that was my first, and I'm just going to pretend, I'm going to knit the first couple, and then I'm going to pull on that tail to sort of tighten that up, because that was that first stitch that we did. So it's pretty loose. So I'm just going to tighten it up with the tail. Okay, and I'm going to knit across these stitches. I know this looks complicated because I've got two different circulars going on, but as soon as I get to the end here, it will all make sense to you. What did you buy off of Wish? What did you buy off of Wish? Woven. Amazing. Oh my God. Is that what they're called? Bulb safety pins. I did not know that. That's amazing. I want that. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to look that. That would be, I mean, look, I have heaps. But if you buy them in the knitting shop, they're going to cost you an arm and a leg. Buy them off of AliExpress or something like that. You're going to get them for a ton cheaper. This is the right size, right? Let me just check. 3 mil, 3 mil, and 3 mil. They just feel differently because one's wood and one's metal. No more purling. Back to knitting. Okay, so now I'm switching from magic loop to the 2 circulars method. So for those of you who wanted to see the magic here, all right, let me spread these stitches out so you can see. All right, so we've still got our armhole there, right? We're knitting around and around in a spiral, but 50% of the stitches are on one circular needle, the wooden one here, which you can see, and the other 50% of the stitches are on the metal needle with the plastic cable that you can see. So literally, imagine for the magic loop, it's just as if these cables were joined together, right? And that was the loop that we pulled out in the middle. But instead, I've just got 50% of the stitches on one needle, 50% of the stitches onto the other. It's much easier to do like I did if you sort of get it going and then switch it onto the second needle. So now all I do is I'm going to flip it around. So which side am I on? It's actually handy if you have 2 different needles because then it's easy to remember which one you're doing. So now I'm going to do the wooden needle. So I just knitted the metal needle, now I'm on the wooden. So all I do is I make sure I'm knitting with the same ends of the same needle. And look, so there's all my 50% of the stitches on that needle. I'm just going to pull them along and knit on it. Knit across those. And the rest of the stitches are just hanging there on that other needle. They're just sitting there. And it'd be so much nicer if it wasn't this crappy plastic cable because it curls up on itself. So I've just got to sort of fight with that. So when I do the first couple stitches at the join at the corner, so this is where I'm switching from one needle to another, I knit the first stitch, I put my needle into the second, and then I just pull a little tighter to close that gap up before I make the second, just the first couple stitches. I pull a little bit tighter. Otherwise you can get what we call a ladder. Where, same as you do DPNs. If you're using DPNs, this is effectively, imagine using 2 DPNs. That's what the 2 circulars method is. It's like, because if you can have a set of 5 DPNs where you have 4 as a square and your spare one that you're knitting around, or you can have a set of 4 where you make a triangle with 3 DPNs and then you've got the spare for knitting. Imagine taking another one away. You had a set of 3 DPNs where you got 50% of the stitches on one DPN, double pointed needle, 50% on the other DPN, and then you've got the spare needle for knitting with. The reason people don't do that is because with a rigid needle, it's really annoying and awkward to knit across those stitches. But if you use a cable needle, it means it's floppy. And so the other half is just sitting there. So that's my other half is, imagine, is on a floppy DPN effectively. And now I'm knitting across the other 50% with 1 DPN. So magic loop and 2 circulars are very, very, very similar. And with both of those techniques, you can do 2 at a time. So when I get back to the start, I will explain how that might work. But as I said, if you look up socks on 2 circulars, look, all the complexity with these techniques is in how you get the stitches on the needle. You know, how you start off your circular project or your sock, and then distribute the stitches onto the needles, which is the same problem you have with DPNs, you know, casting on. You cast onto one needle and then you divide it. Well, the same thing with this. Cast onto one needle and then, as I did, knit it on or divide it across the 2 circulars that you're using. So I'll get back to the beginning of the round. I'm just going to knit 1 stitch, knit 1 stitch past the stitch marker, because if I make the needle switch there, my stitch marker is going to fall off. I mean, you don't have to have a stitch marker in this case. I could just make the I can get rid of the stitch marker. I don't need it, because I'll just make the needle transition be the start and end of the round. So that's the end of the wooden needle. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to knit these last few stitches onto the metal needle. Again, it looks complicated, but it's only because this stupid metal needle is really stiff. But I don't have that many 3mm needles. Come on. Four, 5, 6. Right, 6 stitches on there. And now I'm back onto the metal needle. I was just getting it so my start of the round falls exactly between the 2 needles. So now the wooden needle is now just going to lie there. It's at rest. He's not doing any work. He's just sitting there holding 50% of the stitches, and he's just sitting there. And I'm taking the other end of the metal needle and I'm knitting with the 2 ends of the metal needle, as if I'm just knitting across a scarf, knitting across a plain flat bit of knitting. Don't have to worry about the fact that it's actually a tube. And again, see, that's where I'm getting that ladder where I started. So again, that's that gap. I will just, oh, hang on, my last stitch didn't quite knit. There we go. So that's where I'm going to use that tail afterwards to close that up. So I'm just going to pull these stitches across that gap just a little tighter than I normally do, and use my tail to tighten it up as well. So I'm going to get just a little bit of a gap, a hole there in the corner. Kind of unavoidable, really, and I will close it up later. So I'll go ahead and I'll do a couple rounds. Council worker leaning on the shovel. Yep, pretty much. So yeah, it's just sitting there, not doing anything. And that's where it's very handy to have 2 different needles, because you make sure the one trick with this technique is you always want to be knitting with the ends of the same needle. So I know that I'm knitting metal needle to metal needle. What I've done if I had 2 similar needles, and one technique Kat Bordy recommends, is actually putting a bit of nail polish on the ends of one needle so that you can tell them apart. Because if you accidentally grab the wrong end of the needle to knit with, you can end up with this MC Escher Mobius nightmare. So having 2 different needles for doing the 2 circulars is actually a big advantage. I just wish I didn't have this crappy plastic one. People say you can dunk it in hot water and straighten it out. I have never had good luck with that. Okay, so I finish one of the circulars. I literally just pull it through to the middle, so that all the stitches are lying there on it, and then you just flip the piece around the other direction. And so your working wool is coming off the right, and I'm now onto the wooden needle. So I'm just going to pull the wooden needle along. And so I'm just knitting from one end of the wooden needle to the other. And again, I'm going to pull that first couple stitches. Actually, it's pretty good here. You just want to make sure you're not getting a ladder there. And you can vary the point, you know, move the point where the divide happens, just so. See this needle? Get out of my way. You don't want to create a ladder, but once you block it and wash it, any sort of laddering will probably pull out anyway. All right. Wow, more people are joining the stream. Like, I've been going for more than 3 hours, you guys. Oh my God. All right. I should tell my husband we'll have lunch soon. I'll just send him a quick message. Okay. So yeah, for those who've just joined, I'm knitting the jumper Lenatus by Susan Crawford from her book Evolution, which was linked in the chat stream a bit earlier. It is a 4-ply or fingering weight yarn, depending on where you are located. Yarn weights have different names. In Australia, I would say 4-ply. In I think US or UK, I would describe it as a fingering weight. Maybe a baby weight, usually a 4-plies, because a sock yarn weight, that sort of thickness. So quite fine. I have finished. It's knitted from the top down in the round. So I started from the collar and knitted down, increasing through the yoke to the armpits, divided for the sleeves, and then knitted the body plain. And now that I'm at the end of this row, I will spread it out and show you. Actually, I'll show you the photo. This is what it looked like when I tried it on. This is when I was finishing the waist. So you can see, started from the collar, went down the body, increasing to the armpits. Then I divided for the armpits, knitted the body plain. And thus far this morning, I finished off the waistline. And I can show you that now. So there's the top of the jumper where I started. I knitted down from there to the sleeves, and now we've just picked up one of the sleeves, and I'm now knitting the sleeve downwards from there. But the body is plain yarn, so much plain knitting, and we did the ribbing and the cast off thus far this morning. So I'm now going round and round on the sleeves, and I'm doing short sleeves, so they won't be, hopefully it won't take me too long to knit. Let me see if the pattern includes a photo showing you what this is going to look like finished. Yeah, so that is Susan Crawford, I believe, modeling the jumper. So I've done mine in, obviously in a different color. I feel like she's done hers with a bit more ease than I have. Hers is a little bit looser and bigger. I have done it a little bit more fitted on me. But again, some of that might be the blocking as well when I block it out. But that's what it's going to look like. So I'm just going round and around the sleeves now. And I'm doing the sleeves on 2 circular needles, which is why it looks like an octopus here. But I was demonstrating that technique. But you know what? Yes, Happy New Year! Happy New Year to people in Australia. It is now just gone midnight, so Happy New Year, Australia. Normally in Sydney, I live close enough in Sydney to the harbor that I can hear the fireworks. So I've only bothered to go to the harbor once or twice to actually see the fireworks, but we would open up the doors and windows and hear the fireworks going off, and it's always a fun day. Unfortunately, right now, hopefully people have not done that. Hopefully people are watching them on their TV. I did see photos this morning on Twitter of, yeah, you only need to go once, exactly. I did see photos on the harbor foreshore of that they basically had them blocked off. Like normally people go early and camp out all day for a prime viewing spot. the last time I did the harbor fireworks was because I have a good friend who had an apartment at Blues Point, which is right on the harbor. And so you could see the fireworks from his house. And so but because that side of the harbor gets so crowded that literally the police block it off, and you have to be in there before they shut it off, and you have to be on a list of approved people, because I mean his apartment building hired like private security to keep people from, getting in their yard and partying. And so yeah, it was always, we only did it once or twice. But we're still a good 10 hours off here in Germany. It's 2 in the afternoon. Sun is shining. Have a bottle of fizzy chilling in the fridge. And Rod got up this morning to start some pizza dough because he's going to make us some homemade deep dish pizza or pan pizza for dinner, for our New Year's Eve dinner. And I think I will probably finish there because I'm getting hungry. So I'll be back on tomorrow. Hopefully I'll be nearing the end of the sleeves. You'll be able to see. So I will see you tomorrow morning as well. Thank you so much to those of you from the States who joined me in the very wee hours of the morning. I can't believe you guys hung around, Mumble, and I had someone, Melissa was on there as well, but so now I'm knitting down the sleeves. So hopefully I'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks again. Feel free to subscribe so you hear when I'm doing this. As I said, normally I only do it on Sundays, but a few more days of vacation left. I will probably spend some more time on here. And thank you very much for the conversation. I feel like I've been back in my knitting group, and I really needed that. So you guys are awesome. I will see you tomorrow. All right. Have a great night. Happy New Year to those of you in everywhere around the world. Obviously, Australia are first, and my heart is back in Sydney. So Happy New Year to everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow. Onwards to 2021.